In this particular video, I'm going to discuss what you should avoid doing. So you want to avoid doing the following. Now, this is a list of high priority things that you should watch out for. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff out there, but these are the main things that you need to look for. First of all, you need to avoid banned and blacklisted domain names. What do I mean by that? Basically, remember, when you rent a domain name, you're renting year by year by year. You don't actually own that domain name. You could rent it for 10 years, you could rent it for 50, 30, whatever. The point is, a domain name could have history already, especially if you're buying an expired domain name. Somebody owned it previously, but you don't know what that person did to that domain name. Possibly they spammed people using that domain name. Possibly they did a lot of abusive things with the domain name. And then they ended up getting blacklisted on Spam Cops and blacklisted. And when you're blacklisted, that's not a good thing, especially when you buy a domain name that has blacklisted. Then you have to go through a lot of process to get that unblacklisted or get that off the list. So you want to do your due diligence first. How do you do your due diligence? How do you figure out the history of that specific domain name? Well, I'm going to give you specific guidelines so to help you do that. So how do you know? Well, the domain name that has no PageRank value. If you check the PageRank, it has no PageRank value whatsoever, it's likely to be banned. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the case. That's not always the case, but that's some indication. Second of all, the domain name is not located in Google or in any other major search engine. Now, like I said, that doesn't mean it's 100%. But these are, tools, these are guidelines that you need to follow. If that's the case, you might want to check that out. Okay, maybe this domain name was banned or maybe it was blacklisted. Let me do further research. Well, here are some tools that you can use. Okay, so we got 3 tools here. The first thing I want you to check is www.iwebtool.com/Google_banned. Now, this specific tool, you can enter the domain name right here, www. Whatever your domain is, .com or .net, .tv, whatever, and click check. If that passes, then I still want you to double check. I want you to go to banchecker.com, enter that in here. If it checks out okay, fine. And then we got our trusty tool here, Google. You can do Yahoo and MSN and other search engines as well. Now, keep in mind that some domain names that you might register were never registered before. If that's the case, that's a good thing. If that's the case, then possibly they are not appearing in Google, in Yahoo, or in MSN.com. That's fine. As long as they pass these 2 right here, that's good. The last 3 are just in case you're buying an expired domain name. If they are expired domain names, since there's a previous domain owner, you want to still double check the search engines, Google, Yahoo, and MSN. Alright, so now that you understand how to check for banned and blacklisted domain names, the second thing is that you want to avoid trademark names. You definitely want to avoid that unless you want to get sued. As you know, trademark names are things like Walmart, Best Buy, Pizza Hut, names of companies that have been registered. You also probably want to avoid, company names because most likely that has been trademarked. And, people can go after you and sue you unless you want to get sued, unless you want to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. Then avoid trademark names. For example, if I was selling something that related to Best Buy, or I was a competitor of Walmart, then I definitely want to avoid, trademark names. Now, this is just common sense. I am not a lawyer for disclaimer reasons. If you want to seek legal advice, blah, 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 you want to talk to a real lawyer. But this is pretty much common sense. Avoid trademark names. You also want to avoid going on a shopping spree. I've made this mistake before as well. Unless you want to waste money. At the most, you probably want to invest in 10 domains at a time. 10 domain names, build them up, flip them, then sell them. Don't try to invest in like hundreds of domain names. We're talking about $10 each, $8 each, $7 each, whatever, depending on the domain registrar. So it can add up. So what I want you to do is focus on 10 and then stop and then focus on those 10. And I made that mistake in the past too. I registered 50, 30, 30, 50, 60 domains at a time sometimes when I was in this business. And I realized that some of those domain names I could not even sell. Some of the domain names I only sold for a few bucks. But you got to realize that you're not going to get rich. But you've got to do the proper research that I'm about to show you. If you do the proper research, you can increase the value of the domain name. You increase your chance of making more money. So start small, doing well. If you're starting to do well, then invest more later. Another thing, stick with .com names if possible. If they're .net, .org, .tv, they are good, but the value drops unless you're dealing with, let's say .tv, and you're dealing with an actual, TV station that you've built, or something that people can watch that relates to TV. Then they can be good. But other than that, if that's not the case, then you want to stick with .com names if possible, because when people psychologically they think of a website, they're going to probably assume that it is a .com. So the value increases because of that mentality that everybody has in society. So you want to stick with .com names if possible. Now there are situations when you can go to .net, .org, and things like that, and I'll show you that like in the next video. Lastly, you want to avoid buying domain names that you think are cool. I've done this in the past. Sitting there, you're thinking, oh man, that domain name is going to be cool. You know what? I've bought over 20 domain names that I thought were cool, lost money on them, just let them expire because I thought they were cool. I did not do my keyword research, and I did not do proper profitability research, which I'm going to show you how to do and how that works so that you can see that in action.